holistic development of schools. There's so many corporates that are involved in education, as we've just heard, and it's an important initiative, no doubt. But Telkom has chosen a different engagement with schools. And to tell us more about the nature of this engagement, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Shafika Isaacs, Telkom Foundation Chairperson. Then straight after that, we'll bring you a panel just drilling deeper into how all of this works.
Tell me, what do they know? What do they know? What do they know? Tell me, what do they know? What do they know? Tell me, what do they know? What do they know? Tell me, what do they know?
Good morning, friends, colleagues, partners. It's a very bright, sunny Johannesburg morning today after that hailstorm. And I hope that that's a sign of the horizons that are before us as the Trialogue Network. So I'm very honored to be talking on behalf of the Telkom Foundation, and my main job as the chairperson is to really give you the starter menu, because I'm leaving the dessert, the heavy drinking, and the main part to Sarah and her team, who will follow me after my very brief overview of the strategy and the approach that we have learned hard lessons from, certainly over the past 5 years. So we were quite intentional to work at a small scale, but in doing so, to go deep. So we were intentional in our strategic approach to focus attention on the child at the center of the ecosystem, because we realized that we actually do not know our children in our systems. We do not know the young people and their daily grind, their daily struggles. So we were very open-minded in placing at the center, surfacing the perspectives, the worldview, the voices of young people, of children in targeted communities and schools in 2 provinces in South Africa. That is Gauteng and the Eastern Cape, quite deliberately and quite intentionally, because we understood after many, many years of work as a foundation over the last few decades that we need to go deep in order to go wide. And so I'm going to speak very briefly about some of the defining features of what we are calling a holistic approach. And I think perhaps the most defining experience and theme is that we have learned that to engage with the messes, layers upon layers of messes, complexity, as we engage daily with the schools over the last 5 years, is that the defining feature of engaging with messes is to work with humility. We recognize that as a collective, we also had a collective ignorance. And so it is about how we engage with humility by constantly and actively fostering a sense of agency and visibility and recognition with the children and working directly with them. So we targeted very deliberately something like 4,000 plus learners, young people, mainly teenagers, 13 years and above. And we started to work in 2017 with grade 8 learners with the intention of working with a long view. Because as a foundation that has been around for many decades, we've also learned that quick fix, supply side, short-term approaches has actually caused more harm to our system. So the long view was a crucial defining feature of our strategy. And by long, we meant that we would work with a cohort of about 4,000 plus learners deeply over a 5-year period and beyond, systematically every year, growing that cohort, but working deeply with them to understand their perspective in their voices. But we recognize that to do so, we also need to work with the ecosystem of support, the circles of trust and nurturance of the child. So a very deliberate part of the strategy was to work with the child in the school and working with the school communities. So a concerted strategy to support the teachers whose role is beyond just teaching them academic subjects. We know that our teachers play many roles. And so to work in a holistic way in nurturing the capabilities of highly stressed out teachers in our communities and focusing attention on strengthening their pedagogical knowledge, their content subject-based knowledge, their technological knowledge. As a technological company, we've harnessed our distinctive competencies as a company that works with technologies by integrating their technologies into the daily lives from the perspective and within context of the children in the schools in ways that are relevant to them. So we didn't do the supply side approach where we tell or advise or instruct, but it was very much surfacing the views and insights of learners, of teachers, and very importantly, in working with the child in the ecosystem, is building the capability of leadership in the schools. So a targeted number of schools, a targeted cohort of learners over a period of time, focusing on building the leadership and the capability within the school system, the principals, and very importantly, as my attempt at telling the story in one picture, working also with the school within the district. So the partnership between the district officials, the subject advisors, and the schools with the teachers, with the principal, in support of creating a caring environment for our learners was a critical part of our journey. And I say that with great humility because what surfaced constantly are things that we hadn't even possibly imagined. The depth of the struggles that our learners contend with every single day. Which is why our focus wasn't only on digital skills or technological knowledge. It was also about how those devices, how those resources can enable the foundational learning that we discovered was crucial for the learners that had already reached high school that do not have the basic cognitive foundational capabilities, and many people refer to that as the backlog in the system. We prefer not to use deficit speak when we talk about our children, and they've also told us that, and I'll come to that in a minute. And so a lot of our focus over the 5 years was working systematically with 4,000 plus learners in building their academic cognitive capability, knowing how to learn mathematics and learning mathematics, knowing how to learn about life sciences and physical science, as well as language, the English language, knowing how to read, to be able to do mathematics and physics and science. So a big part of the program was to work with the instructional core, as we say in academia, and building their academic learning capability in the specific curriculum subjects where we know our learners struggle, particularly learners from the most excluded communities, the most invisible, unrecognized communities. And so the academic part of our strategic equation was very crucial, but it was about how we do that, and how we do that systematically by tracking every learner, engaging with their stories, the stories that they tell us. And a big part of that was less about the academics, was actually more about fostering a sense of care and a sense of just basic human dignity. We realized that the most important struggle that our learners were facing was just to be decent, to have a decent life, and to work and be in this world in a dignified way. So a big part of our focus was on fostering a sense of dignity, a sense of well-being, and working directly with the kinds of psychosocial mental health challenges that our learners are facing with. And that was the messiness, because there are layers and layers and layers that we still do not know how to work effectively in terms of the psychological, the social, the cultural makeup, and how all of those conspire together to create conditions of inspiration and creativity and talent, because there's so much deficit speak about our learners. And so the foremost struggle, and unfortunately we couldn't bring learners here to tell their story because they need to be in school, but the biggest struggle every single learner has told us was their struggle to be visible, to be seen, to be recognized. And we learned that the very hard way. And still, with humility, we realize that we have so much more to learn about how to do that in a way that fosters a culture of care, a pedagogy of care. Those are very big words, but when engaging at the coalface, in the belly of the beast, we realize that we absolutely need to put our heads together collectively, not just as the Telkom Foundation and positioning and marketing our brand, but to work as a society, to work with our partners. So this, we knew at the outset, this isn't a Telkom intervention of connected schools. This is the national systems intervention. And we believe that the world lives in a grain of sand. We can see the world in a grain of sand. I think some famous poet said that, I think William Blake. A world in a grain of sand. So the macrocosm and all our debilitating crises manifest in the life of the child, and at the microcosm in the schools. So it is for that reason that we felt that if we work systematically in trying to develop a model, 4,000 learners over 5 years, journey with them from grade 8 to grade 9, grade 10, and they all matriculated in 2022, we could tell a story of that journey through their voices. Not my voice as the chair or the CEO, head of foundation's voice, but to surface their stories. And we realized that for the DBE, in their national slogan, the DBE has a national slogan that says, every child is a national asset. But often when we speak about our children, we do not speak about them as assets, we use deficit speak. 78% children can't read for meaning, and we throw those statistics about. This struggle of the Telkom Foundation with all of our partners has been for the recognition of children as our national assets. And we've tried to use strategies, particularly working with digital technologies, not in an evangelical way, but also critically, to look at how digital technologies can in fact be used to harness the talents, the creativity, the inspiration with our learners. And that has been the defining story. The defining story has been how learners could in fact learn, first and foremost, to develop a capacity to aspire beyond just the township or the school that they are in. To see a world beyond was a big part of our journey, and the technologies made that possible. To have children learn how to create their own world, to code, to create systems that can deal with real-world problems that they deal with daily. And to see themselves as creators was a big part of how we approached the issue of growing not just digital skills, not just digital capabilities, but a sense of digital agency, that I can design technologies to change my life, to change the life of my family, to change the conditions, the debilitating conditions of my community and my society. That is the sense of digital agency with which we worked. My time is almost up. The final point that I wanted to make is that in working at a microcosm level, ensuring that it filters through the entire macrocosmic system, we also worked with the provincial departments of education in the provinces where we focused attention, and also made absolutely sure that we engage in robust conversation with the national department. We call that thought leadership, not that we think we know all the thoughts that we should lead you, but to use that as a segue into ensuring that we have critical conversations where we challenge our assumptions in the national leadership about how we work well as a private company And not only one private company, but if I look across the room, imagine, I was saying to my colleague, Professor Nikki Roberts, imagine we were led to work, all of us together. We could make such a formidable difference as a community of CSI organizations, companies with the state. But our biggest challenge is to build the capability of the state to be able to do so. So that was also an important part of our work, is to build the intellectual insight, wisdom of the national department in how we address some of those very critical issues by learning from our experience at the micro level. And so I'd like to conclude, because Sarah and her team will tell us the more juicy bits. I'd like to conclude that we've learned that working with humility in engaging with the messes, the layers and layers and layers of messes, has meant that we remain teachable, that we not for a minute pretend that we know what it is like to work and live and learn under the conditions that our children are living in our schools. So constantly our refrain is to remain teachable, to be open to learning, and to be open to being astonished, to be open to being surprised, particularly by the talents, the creativity, the inspiration that lies within each and every single one of our learners. Our job is to ensure that we mobilize all of our resources to ensure that every child becomes a national asset. Thank you.
So much. What a great talk. What a great talk. No notes, by the way. All from the heart. It felt like a moment there, like something that Oprah always used to say is like, everybody wants to be seen. At the heart of all of us, no matter where you come from, no matter your background, all of us just want to be seen and not be rendered invisible. So I think you touched on some of the basic things in life just so well. And the book, of course, that is around what happened to you, not what's wrong with you, but rather what happened to you. Then you get a different engagement. So it's a different perspective. It's a way of positioning our questions, our interactions, our entry into any arena in a new way with a different foresight. Thank you for framing what we'll be delving into in a short while.